My name is Sarah, and this story I'm about to tell you is one that still makes me smile when I think about it. But at the time, it was one of the most humiliating, painful dinners I had ever sat through in my life. The way my own family treated me that night cut me deeper than I care to admit, and yet, the twist that followed is something I don't think anyone at that table will ever forget. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss when I share a new story. And please share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing from you. It started with my mom's idea of having a big family dinner. She wanted to celebrate my sister's engagement. Now, I have no problem with celebrating big milestones, but I knew how these family dinners usually went for me. My sister, Anna, was the golden child. She was beautiful, charismatic, and always knew how to stay on everyone's good side. She never missed a chance to show off, whether it was her new clothes, her new car, or her new promotion. And me? Well, let's just say I was always the one who got compared. The one who never quite measured up in their eyes. It didn't matter what I did, I was always less than in their view. I kept my personal life private, and that seemed to make them assume I was struggling. Truth was, I had worked hard, harder than most people I knew. I just never felt the need to flaunt it. I believed in quiet success, and maybe that was my mistake, because to my family, silence equaled failure. When the dinner was planned, I debated whether or not I even wanted to go. I thought about pretending I had a work trip or just saying I wasn't feeling well, but some part of me knew that skipping it would only give them more fuel to gossip about me. So I decided to show up. I told myself, it's just dinner. Smile, eat, and leave early. I had no idea what was coming. The moment I walked into the restaurant, I could feel the tension. Everyone was already seated, and I could see the look of surprise on Anna's face when she saw me. It wasn't a happy surprise either. It was almost as if she hadn't expected me to show up at all. "Oh, Sarah, you came," she said, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she always used when she was about to embarrass me. I smiled politely, sat down, and tried to focus on the menu. I told myself I wasn't going to let her get under my skin. But it didn't take long. The conversation around the table was lively, full of laughter and stories. They talked about vacations, new cars, shopping trips. Every single person had something to brag about, and I just listened quietly, not adding much. That's when Anna leaned over with that sly grin of hers and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "So, Sarah, what's new with you? Or are you still, struggling?" The table erupted in chuckles. My aunt even muttered something like, "Well, she doesn't seem too busy these days." I could feel the heat rising in my face, but I forced a smile. "I'm doing just fine," I said calmly. Anna tilted her head and smirked. "Fine? That doesn't sound very exciting. Sarah, maybe if you worked a little harder instead of hiding away, you wouldn't always be, behind." Behind. That word stung. Behind what? Behind her? Behind their shallow definition of success? I clenched my hands under the table, reminding myself to stay calm. Then my uncle chimed in. "Don't worry, Sarah. Not everyone can be ambitious. Some people just settle." The laughter that followed felt like knives in my chest. I wanted to get up and leave right then, but I told myself walking away would only make me look weak. So I sat there, swallowing every insult, every jab. They kept it going, too. Little jokes about me not being able to afford nice clothes, about me probably still renting instead of owning a house, about me always having potential but never reaching it. It was like they had all secretly agreed that mocking me would be the entertainment for the evening. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, Anna leaned back in her chair and announced, "Honestly, sometimes I wonder if Sarah even has a job." "I mean, do you? Because I can't remember the last time you mentioned anything about work. Maybe you're just embarrassed?" Everyone laughed. Everyone except one person, Anna's fiancé. His name was Daniel. I had only met him once before in passing, so I didn't know much about him. But the way he looked at me when she said that, I could tell he wasn't joining in. He looked curious, almost protective. Before I could even think of a response, he leaned forward and asked, "Sarah, how's the jet holding up?" The entire table went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I looked at him, surprised, but also slightly amused. "The jet?" I repeated. He nodded, smiling like he knew exactly what he was doing. "Yeah. The last time we talked, you mentioned some upgrades you were considering. Did you ever get around to them?" The look on Anna's face was priceless. Her jaw literally dropped. My mom blinked in confusion. My uncle shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The word jet seemed to echo in the silence, bouncing around the table, refusing to be ignored. I smiled slowly, letting the moment sink in. "Yes," I said finally, keeping my voice calm and steady. "I did. The upgrades were finished a few months ago. It's been running perfectly." The silence stretched on, and I could practically feel the confusion thick in the air. Everyone was staring at me, trying to process what they had just heard. A jet? Me? Anna tried to laugh it off. "Wait, what jet? What is he even talking about?" Daniel leaned back, still smiling. "Her jet. You didn't know? Sarah's company has one. I've seen it myself." And just like that, everything changed. The same people who had spent the entire evening mocking me, calling me poor, treating me like I was beneath them, suddenly didn't know what to say. Their faces turned red, their laughter died in their throats, and I sat there, finally feeling like I had the upper hand for once in my life. But here's the thing, I hadn't even planned for that reveal to happen that way. I had kept my life private on purpose, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want to be treated differently. Yet, in that moment, as they all stared at me with wide eyes and stunned silence, I realized maybe letting a little truth slip wasn't such a bad thing after all. The silence at that table felt heavier than anything I had experienced before. All those jokes, all those mocking little comments about me being poor or unsuccessful, suddenly, they looked ridiculous in the light of Daniel's simple question. I could almost see the words jet spinning inside their heads like they couldn't quite comprehend it. My mom was the first to break the silence. "Sarah, what is he talking about?" Her tone wasn't gentle. It was sharp, almost demanding, as if she felt entitled to the answer. I set my fork down carefully, buying myself a second to breathe. I hadn't planned to share details that night. I didn't come to prove anything. But now that everything had been dragged into the open, I figured I might as well. "Well," I said slowly, looking around the table, "I own a company. It's been doing pretty well for a few years now. The jet is just part of the business." Gasps went around the table. My aunt nearly choked on her drink. My uncle blinked so many times it looked like he was trying to wake himself up from a dream. And Anna? She sat frozen, her face pale, her lips slightly parted in shock. You own a company? She repeated, her voice trembling between disbelief and irritation. Yes, I said simply, holding her gaze. My cousin, who had been the loudest one laughing at me earlier, leaned forward eagerly. Wait, what kind of company? I shrugged. We work in tech. Software, mostly. Business solutions. We've grown pretty fast. I keep things quiet because, honestly, I don't like making everything about money. But, well, here we are. The entire energy at the table shifted. Suddenly, the same people who had been mocking me were sitting straighter, paying close attention, their curiosity spilling over. Daniel chuckled softly and looked at Anna. You didn't tell them? I assumed your family already knew. Anna's face turned bright red. I didn't think it was important, she stammered. Besides, Sarah never talks about it. I tilted my head slightly. You never asked. The sting of my words hung in the air. Because that was the truth. They never asked me anything unless it was to set me up for embarrassment. They never showed interest in my life, so I kept it to myself. My uncle cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Well, that's impressive, Sarah. Very impressive. I had no idea. I smiled politely. No one did. Then, of course, the questions came pouring in. How many employees do you have? What kind of clients? Do you really travel on a jet? Where do you live? Why didn't you ever say anything? It was almost funny. These same people who had been so quick to laugh at me were now practically tripping over themselves to show interest. I answered calmly, never bragging, just giving them the facts. Yes, the company was mine. Yes, it had grown rapidly. Yes, I had employees in multiple states. And yes, the jet was for business purposes, though I sometimes used it personally when I traveled. I could feel the shift in power. It wasn't something I had asked for, but it was undeniable. For once, I wasn't the butt of the joke. I was the one holding the cards, and they all knew it. Anna finally snapped out of her shock, and I could see the jealousy burning in her eyes. She forced a laugh, trying to brush it off. Well, I guess that explains why you never come to family things. Too busy being a boss, huh? I smiled at her, keeping my tone calm. No, Anna. I didn't come to family things because I was tired of being treated like a joke. The table went quiet again. My mom shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My aunt avoided my eyes. No one dared laugh this time. Daniel, bless him, decided to lighten the mood. You should see the office. It's beautiful. Honestly, Sarah runs things better than most executives I've ever met. I gave him a small smile, silently thanking him for the support. Anna, however, looked like she wanted to sink under the table. As the dinner went on, things changed completely. Instead of mocking me, they kept trying to engage me in conversation, asking about my work, my travels, my plans. It felt strange, almost artificial, like they were scrambling to undo the damage they had done earlier. But I wasn't naive. I could see it for what it was. They didn't suddenly respect me because of who I was, they respected what I had. They respected the money, the success, the shiny surface they could brag about to others. And that realization hurt almost as much as their mockery had. After dessert, when the evening was winding down, Anna pulled me aside. Her voice was low, but her tone was sharp. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. I looked at her calmly. "Tell you what? That I've worked hard for years? That I built something without needing validation from you or anyone else? You never wanted to hear about my life unless it made you feel superior, Anna." She crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone." I almost laughed. "I didn't say a word. You did that all on your own. You called me poor, you mocked me, you encouraged everyone to laugh at me." And then Daniel asked a simple question, and the truth came out. "That's not on me." Her face flushed with anger, but she couldn't argue. Because deep down, she knew I was right. That night, as I drove home, I replayed everything in my head. For years, I had been the quiet one, the one they underestimated, the one they dismissed. And in one dinner, without me even planning it, the truth had shattered the image they had built of me. But as much as it felt like justice, it also left me uneasy. Because now I knew the way they looked at me had changed, and not for the better. They would treat me differently, not out of love or respect, but out of greed and envy. And that, in some ways, was even worse. Still, there was one thing that gave me comfort: Daniel. The way he had handled the situation, the way he had casually revealed what he knew, it felt like he had my back in a room full of people who didn't. And that made me wonder just how much he really knew, and why he chose that moment to reveal it. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Even though the dinner had ended hours ago, my mind hadn't stopped replaying every single detail. The way they laughed at me, the way Daniel had spoken up, the stunned silence when the truth slipped out, it was all tangled up inside me. I thought that maybe with some sleep I'd feel better, but instead, the weight of it was still heavy on my chest. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was a message from my mom: "Sarah, we need to talk. Call me today." I stared at the screen, feeling that familiar mix of love and frustration. My mom wasn't cruel like Anna, but she had always stood by quietly when my relatives mocked me. Sometimes silence cuts just as deep as words. Before I could respond, another message popped up. This time from Daniel. "I'm sorry if last night caught you off guard. I just couldn't sit there listening to them tear you down. If you want to grab coffee and talk, let me know." I blinked at his words. Part of me was grateful that someone finally stood up for me, grateful that someone cared enough to risk the awkwardness. But another part of me felt unsettled. Why had he spoken up then? Why did he even know about my jet in the first place? I got up, made myself coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window. For years, I had worked quietly, building my company from the ground up. I had made sacrifices, worked endless nights, put everything into making it succeed. And now, the one place where I wanted peace, my family, had turned it into ammunition against me, first by mocking me and then by treating me like a prize to be displayed. I decided to text Daniel back. Coffee sounds good. Let's meet. We agreed on a little cafe downtown, one of those quiet places where no one really paid attention to anyone else. When I arrived, he was already there, waving me over with that easy smile that had made him seem so approachable at dinner. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, he said once I sat down. No, it's fine, I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm mug the barista had just placed in front of me. I just wasn't expecting last night to go the way it did. He leaned forward slightly. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. But watching them talk to you like that, it didn't sit right with me. They don't know who you are, not really. And I couldn't just let them keep going. I studied his expression. There was no smugness, no arrogance. Just sincerity. But how did you even know? I asked quietly. About the jet, the business? He chuckled softly. Anna told me you dabbled in tech. But when I did my own research, I like to know about the people in my fiancé's life. I found your company's name. Let's just say it wasn't hard to connect the dots. You're a lot more accomplished than Anna gives you credit for. Hearing him say that stirred something in me. For so long, I had been invisible to my own family, but here was someone who saw me clearly without me even trying. I never wanted to make it about money, I admitted. That's why I don't talk about it. But last night, it was like the second they found out, everything shifted. Suddenly they cared. Suddenly I mattered. Daniel nodded slowly. Yeah. People reveal themselves in moments like that. It's not about you, it's about what they think they can gain from you. His words sank deep, because they echoed what I had already been feeling. My family's sudden interest wasn't genuine, it was selfish. As we talked, I found myself opening up more than I expected. I told him about the early years of my company, how I struggled, how I almost gave up more times than I could count. I told him about working nights in my tiny apartment, eating instant noodles because I couldn't afford much else, and how every setback felt like proof that my family had been right about me. But I also told him about the turning point, the moment when a big client had taken a chance on me, and everything had started to change. From there, my little startup had grown into something real, something solid. Daniel listened intently, never interrupting, never making me feel like I was bragging. He just listened, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like my story mattered. When we finally parted ways, he said something that stuck with me. You don't owe anyone explanations, Sarah. Especially not people who never believed in you. But don't be afraid to stand in your own light. You've earned it. Those words replayed in my mind all day. Later that evening, I got another message from my mom. This time, it wasn't a request, it was practically an order. Come over tomorrow. We need to discuss what happened at dinner. I sighed. I knew this was coming. My family wasn't going to let it go. The next day, I drove to my parents' house. As soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension. My mom was in the living room, my dad sitting stiffly beside her. Anna was there too, looking miserable, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Sarah, my mom began, her voice unusually stern. Why didn't you tell us? Why did we have to find out like that? I raised an eyebrow. Find out what? That I built a life for myself? That I'm not the failure you always made me out to be? "That's not fair," my dad said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We didn't know." "Exactly," I shot back. "You didn't know because you never cared to ask. Every time I came here, all you wanted to talk about was Anna's achievements, Anna's life, Anna's plans. When I tried to share mine, I got dismissed. So I stopped trying." Anna glared at me. "You're making me sound like the villain. All I ever did was succeed. Sorry if that made you feel small." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Anna, you called me poor in front of everyone last night. You've mocked me for years. Don't act like you're innocent in this." The room went quiet again, thick with unspoken tension. Finally, my mom sighed, rubbing her temples. "This isn't how family should be. We should be proud of you, Sarah. But the way you let it come out, it embarrassed all of us." That was the moment I realized it. They weren't upset about how they had treated me. They were upset that the truth had made them look bad. I stood up, my voice steady. "I don't need your approval. I never did. I just wanted respect. But clearly, that's something I'll never get here." Anna scoffed, but there was no real fight left in her. My dad looked down, my mom shook her head, and I walked out feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding anymore. But it also meant I couldn't go back to pretending my family's love was unconditional. Because now I knew, it never was. After I left my parents' house that day, I drove aimlessly for a while, not really knowing where I was going. My hands were gripping the steering wheel tightly, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and sadness. It felt like I had finally said everything I'd been holding back for years, but now there was this hollow space inside me. I had spent so long craving my family's approval that walking away from it left me unsteady. But over the next few days, something strange started happening. My phone, which had always been quiet when it came to family, suddenly wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls from my mom, texts from my dad, even little check-in messages from Anna. At first, I ignored most of them. But curiosity got the better of me, and I started reading what they were saying. It was different. Completely different. Instead of ignoring me or dismissing me, they were suddenly warm, polite, even sweet. My mom sent me a long message about how proud she was, how she didn't mean for things to come across the way they did, and how she wanted us to be closer. My dad sent me a picture of a car he was thinking about buying and asked for my advice. And Anna of all people, sent me a message that almost made me laugh out loud. She wrote, "Hey sis, thinking of starting something on my own soon. Maybe you can give me some business tips over coffee?" If I hadn't lived through years of mockery, I might have believed them. But now, after everything, I could see the pattern clearly. This wasn't about love. It was about convenience. They didn't respect me, they wanted something from me. Still, part of me hesitated. Wasn't this what I had wanted? For them to finally acknowledge me, to finally take me seriously? But it felt wrong. Like I was just a trophy they had suddenly realized could shine if they polished it enough. A week later, Anna invited me to brunch. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Something inside me needed to see it through, to test whether my suspicions were right. When I arrived, Anna was already there, sitting at a sunny corner table. She waved at me like nothing had ever happened, her smile wide and practiced. Sarah. I'm so glad you came, she said, pulling me into a hug that felt more like a performance than affection. I sat down, trying to keep my expression neutral. She dove right into chatter about her upcoming wedding, her dress fittings, the guest list. But then, as the waiter set down our drinks, her tone shifted. So, Daniel tells me your company is doing really well, she said casually, though her eyes were sharp, watching me closely. I took a slow sip of my coffee. It is. She leaned in, lowering her voice just enough to sound conspiratorial. I was actually thinking about starting something of my own, you know? Maybe fashion, maybe consulting. I haven't decided yet. But I'd love for you to guide me. You could even invest, if you wanted. And there it was. The truth slipped out, just like I expected. I smiled politely, though inside I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. Anna, I think it's great that you're exploring new ideas. But I don't mix business with family. It gets complicated. Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she covered it up with a laugh. Of course, of course. I just thought, since you've been so successful, you'd want to help me too. But no pressure. We finished the brunch with small talk, but the air between us had shifted. She knew I saw through her, and I knew she wasn't reaching out of love, just greed. Later that night, my mom called again. This time, I answered. Sarah, honey, she began in that overly sweet tone, your father and I were thinking, maybe you could join us for dinner this weekend. Just a small family gathering. We want to make things right. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the image of Anna's calculating smile was still fresh in my mind. I'll think about it, I replied. When Saturday came, I found myself outside their house again. Part of me told me to turn back, but I went in anyway. And as soon as I walked through the door, I was met with the same kind of over-the-top warmth I'd felt from Anna at brunch. Sarah, my dad exclaimed, hugging me tighter than he ever had before. Come in, come in. We've missed you. My mom fussed over me, insisting I sit in the most comfortable chair, bringing me food and drinks like I was a guest of honor. Even Anna, though quieter than usual, kept throwing me polite smiles. For a little while, I let myself enjoy it. I let myself pretend this was real, that they finally saw me as someone worthy of respect. But then, halfway through dinner, my dad cleared his throat and said, You know, Sarah, we'd been thinking, your cousin Emily is having a hard time with her business. Maybe you could give her some advice? Or even invest a little to help her out. You know, family supports family. The words hit me like a cold wave. It was all happening again. The kindness, the warmth, it wasn't real. It was just a setup for an ask. I set my fork down and looked at him calmly. Dad, I love Emily, but I'm not a bank. If she wants advice, she can call me. But I'm not writing checks just because we're related. The room went silent. My mom looked flustered, my dad frowned, and Anna shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Finally, I stood up. I came here hoping we could just be a family. But it feels like every conversation is about what I can give you. I've worked hard for what I have, and I'm proud of it, but I won't let it be the only reason you value me. And with that, I left again. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange mix of sadness and strength. Sadness because the people I had loved the most seemed incapable of seeing me for who I really was. But strength, because for once, I wasn't letting them define my worth. A few days later, Daniel texted me again. "How are you holding up?" I told him the truth. It's been rough, but I'm done chasing their approval. I just want peace. He replied, "You deserve that. And if they can't give it, you'll find it elsewhere." For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally stepping into my own life, free from the shadows of their judgment. In the days after that awkward dinner, I decided to distance myself from my family as much as I could. I answered fewer calls, ignored the polite little "hope you're doing well" texts, and threw myself back into work. My company had a big project launching soon, and honestly, the distraction was exactly what I needed. But life has a way of pulling you back into situations you don't want to face. A week later, Anna called me herself. Not a text, not a quick note, an actual phone call. When I saw her name flash on my screen, I almost didn't pick up. But curiosity, or maybe some leftover guilt, made me swipe and answer. "Sarah," she said in a cheerful, overly enthusiastic tone, "I really hope you're free next Friday. We're having our official engagement party, and you have to be there. Everyone will be there. It wouldn't be the same without you." I hesitated. After everything, I wasn't sure I wanted to put myself in the middle of my family again. But part of me also thought, maybe, just maybe, things could be different this time. "All right," I said finally. "I'll come." She squealed with excitement, thanking me over and over before hanging up. But something in her voice had sounded rehearsed, like she was selling me something rather than simply inviting me. When the day of the party arrived, I dressed simply but elegantly. Nothing flashy, but enough to remind myself that I didn't have to shrink into the background anymore. As I drove up to the venue, a rented hall decorated with fairy lights and flowers, I reminded myself over and over, I am enough. I don't need their approval. The moment I walked in, I could feel eyes on me. A few relatives gave me polite nods, others avoided my gaze completely. My mom hurried over with a forced smile, hugging me tightly. "Sarah, so glad you're here. Come, sit near the family table." I took my seat, quietly observing. Anna was glowing in her dress, Daniel at her side looking relaxed but sharp. He spotted me across the room and gave me a warm nod, one that carried more sincerity than anything else I had experienced from my family lately. Dinner was served, drinks were poured, and for a while, the night seemed normal. I even started to let my guard down, enjoying little conversations with cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. But then, as dessert was being served, my dad stood up, clearing his throat like he was about to make some big announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, raising his glass. "Tonight, we celebrate Anna and Daniel. And as you all know, weddings are not just about two people, they're about family coming together. Which is why I'm happy to say that Sarah, our dear Sarah, has generously offered to cover some of the wedding expenses."